We currently have 28 staff, and we have worked more than 300 international projects since our company was established in 2008. Then please go to the next page. Thank you. This page shows logos of our past and current clients. As explained earlier, we have clients of mainly European and American manufacturing companies and also governmental organizations. Industries of our clients are mainly such an industrial sector like machinery components, but we also have clients of consumer products as well. And from next page, my colleague Yasushi will explain the main topic of this presentation. So please enjoy his presentation and do not forget, post your questions at Q&A or F&A panel if you have any. We will answer during the presentation or at the last part of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yasushi Hasegawa, another co-founder of Fenetre Partners. It's a great pleasure for me to share our experience and expertise about the market entry into Japan with you today. And hopefully you can get some new ideas and insights for becoming successful in this market. I'd like to start with a market overview of Japan. You can find some key figures to explain how Japan is. Japan is a small island in the East Asia, next to South Korea and China, and the size is somewhat similar with Germany, and the population is somewhat larger than Germany. And the GDP is roughly $5 trillion, which is the third largest in the world. And the growth rate is usually between 0% and 1%. I can say it's not growing compared with other Asian markets. And you can find two problematic figures. The first one is the GDP per capita, which is roughly $40,000 US. Actually, Japan was ranked world number 2 decades ago, but now it's ranked 26. So I have to say Japan is getting poorer and poorer. For your reference, the growth rate of GDP of Japan in the last 2 decades was about 8% in total, while it's 80% in Germany and over 1,000% in China. So please do not rapid growth in the Japanese market. And another problem is age, median age, which is the second oldest in the world, next to Luxembourg. So I have to say, our country is getting poorer and older. So basically, Japan is not a good market, especially for consumer goods suppliers. So if you are selling consumer goods, you can leave this webinar at this moment. Of course, I'm joking. Hopefully, you can get some positive message from my side. So on this slide, you can see the chart of nominal GDP of Japan. Actually, our economy was growing in the last century like this. At the time, people believed Japan is one of the richest countries on this planet. But in this century, it doesn't grow at all. And my government is announcing our economy is growing recently, but for me, it seems like we're just recovering from bottom here. You can remember what happened in 2008, economic crisis everywhere in the world. And in 2011, we had a big earthquake, which affected a lot on our economy. at the time, our economy was at the bottom. But in the last several years, our economy has been better or recovering. But last year, it's not only in Japan, but COVID-19 affects a lot on our GDP, and it recorded minus 4% last year. And this year, our government expects plus 4%. But I don't believe this, because now the fourth wave of COVID-19 is hitting big cities, including Tokyo right now, and our government will announce the state of emergency again at the end of this month, which is the start of our spring holiday season called Golden Week. However, I can say the situation in Japan is much better than the US and Europe. The total number of deaths by COVID-19 is still less than 10,000. And the total patients are roughly 500,000. So the situation in Japan is not so bad. But our culture is very risk averse. So I think our government is, doing something excessively. But I can say the situation in the Japanese market is much better than the US and Europe. So I think it makes sense that you restart your business development in Japan first, because you are somewhat restricted in doing business in the US and Europe right now. So, and the situation of Japan is highlighted by this good example. This is a chart over the number of cars sold in Japan. About 30 years ago, 8 million of car units were sold, but now, it's just about 5 million. It's a huge drop by 3 million. So if you are selling to automotive, you might think Japan is not a good market. But I have a question. Do you think Japanese automotive companies are doing well? Like Toyota, Honda, Suzuki, Matsuda, Nissan? Actually, they are doing well. Last year, they didn't make any growth. Almost, their growth rate is 0%. But still, they are doing well, better than other automotive companies in the US and Europe, I think. So this is the reason why Japanese automotive players are growing, while our domestic market is shrinking. You can see the blue line. This is the market size inside Japan, which is 5 million, as I explained. But the same number of cars are exported to other countries. So the total domestic production is about 10 million. In addition to that, many Japanese automotive companies are producing cars outside Japan. So globally, they are steadily growing. So if you just think about the domestic market of Japan, Japan is not a good market. But if you try to capture all the markets globally, still Japanese companies are attractive targets for you if you are selling to automotive sector. So I just gave you one example, which is automotive, but in other sectors, so many Japanese manufacturers are growing by global expansion. This is our top 20 manufacturers in terms of growth between 2005 and 2014. The data is a bit old, but you can remember what happened during this period: economic crisis and the big earthquake in 2011. So at the time, our economy was at the bottom, but so many Japanese manufacturers made their growth like this. You can find automotive companies like Toyota, Honda, Nissan, also other industries like Daikin, air conditioners, electronics, Sony, consumer electronics, Toshiba, Mitsubishi, pharmaceuticals. So if you are selling to manufacturers as a supplier, so Japanese companies should be very attractive markets or target companies for you. So you can also see the overseas sales ratio. So for example, Toyota relies on overseas sales by 78%. So they don't rely on the domestic market anymore. So if you think about the business development with Japanese companies, you should not get stuck with the domestic market statistics or any kind of figures, but you have to identify your target companies and check how they are growing, especially outside Japan. It is a very important point to assess the Japanese market. This is a very interesting research conducted by Hacker Japan. They distributed a questionnaire to their membership, German companies located in Japan, to ask which is bigger, A or B. B is the sales revenue from Japanese customers in Japan. A is the sales revenue from Japanese companies located outside Japan. And surprisingly, about half of respondents answered A is greater than B. So German companies located in Japan earns more outside Japan. I think it sounds really tricky. And more surprisingly, 20% answered they are 4 times bigger outside of Japan, even though they are located in Japan. So this is a very tricky but attractive point when you try to develop your Japanese customers. So you can deliver to a Japanese company in Japan, but also to Japanese companies located outside Japan. Now, some of you think you can directly sell to Japanese companies in Europe or everywhere in the world. So it's half true. If you are selling cheap or commodity products, you can directly sell to Japanese companies in the local market like India, Mexico, of course, China, US, Europe. But if you are selling important components, for example, in automotive industry, like sensor for safety driving, or software for autonomous driving, or some engine filter for eco-friendly function, definitely that decision should be made in the headquarters of Japan. And finally, you can deliver to Japanese companies located outside Japan. So this is the reason why many German companies are doing business development in Japan, while the Japanese domestic market is shrinking. This is an additional bonus for you to be successful in Japan. These guys are investors, and those guys are destination. So this is our FDI stock in Asian markets. So you can see Japan is always number 1 or number 2 investors in those Asian markets. It means if you do business development in those Asian countries, you often encounter Japanese companies. But the problem is they don't have a decision maker in the local market. So I think it's making sense. If you do business development in those Asian countries, you should do business development as well in Japan. So in that case, you can access to Japanese companies in those local markets. The good example is Thailand. If you are selling to automotive, unfortunately or fortunately, half of automotive companies are Japanese companies in Thailand. If you don't do business development in Japan, it means you lose half of the Thailand market. So this is a reality of business development with Japanese companies. So I like to wrap up this section. Basically, I don't recommend Japan to companies which is selling consumer goods to average consumers. You can find better market in other Asian countries. Japan is getting poorer and older. Poor old people don't buy a car, new car, or expensive clothes. So now our market is shrinking. The good example is the market size of a department store. It has declined to a half size of the peak time. However, if you are selling industrial goods, I'd like to recommend Japan as your destination or target market, because many Japanese manufacturers are growing by export and production outside Japan. So once you develop the big Japanese customer, you will have a chance to deliver to them located outside Japan. So now, I believe some of you guys agree to my idea that Japan could be your best destination. So from this section, I'd like to explain how to develop your Japanese customers. In this section, I'd like to share some cultural matters, because you will be frustrated with this cultural difference with Japanese companies. So I like to study this cultural difference here. So this is a very typical Japanese HR and career. So most of big Japanese companies hire hundreds of new graduates just after their graduation, like at the age of 22 or 3. At the same time, it's like a boot camp of U.S. Marine. As of April 1st, CEO give a presentation to new graduates in a big conference room, like to a few hundred new graduates. And they had their training for 2 or 3 weeks in April, and then they are assigned to their job. And most of them expect they keep working for a same employer for over 40 years, which is called lifetime employment. For small companies, it's somewhat different, but for big company, it's all same. I believe over 90% of new graduates keep working for a same employer for over 40 years. So, and the payment is made by a very strange way. It depends on how many years you have been working for your employer. So your performance doesn't matter. So the salary will be like this. And it will decline. And if you are promoted to a very high senior level, or board member, or C-level, the salary will be like this. So this is a reason why many Japanese people don't want to change their job, because the longer you keep working for the same employee, and the bigger your salary could be. So this is the reason why it's very difficult to hire a good talent in mid-career, because those people expect getting a high salary at the end of their careers. I know it sounds strange to you, and nowadays some young people don't like this culture, and some choose startups to get more money at the younger age. And this is our organizational culture. It's a really hierarchical. Those are titles. Not only in Japan but in East Asia, people like title. And sometimes some of our prospective clients ask us to arrange a meeting with C-level, like CEO or COO. But organizational culture is somewhat different from the US and Europe. It's not a top-down, and it's not a bottom-up. It's middle up and down. So most of the important things are decided by middle managers, and they usually plan and try to get an approval from higher level, and they implement it to junior level. So if you want to develop your business, you should not try to talk to a C-level, because they are not interested in a particular product or a particular supplier. It's meaningless. It's just waste of time and money for you. And it sounds somewhat strange to you. In Japan, higher level are sort of sinecure or just honorable position. They do nothing. They just work for some ceremony or public things like IR conference or something. They are working very far away from daily operation. So I know it's different from Europe and the US. In the US and Europe, those people should have strong leadership to lead their organization, and they are super busy, and they are not very young. No, sorry, they are not very old. But in Japan, CEO in the big organization should be over 70 years, and the board members or senior level should be over 60 years old, at the youngest 55. Age matters a lot in Japan. And when they make a decision, they need to make a lot of consensus. They have to, persuade many managers, many staff, and sometimes, or usually, important decisions are made unofficially. In an official meeting, they don't speak honestly. Everything is determined by backroom deal. So presentation skill is meaningless in Japan, unfortunately. It's very different from Germany. And I'd like to explain somewhat more about the business culture in Japan. This is a famous framework, cultural dimension, developed by Hostet. I'd like to explain some dimensions where Japan has the very high score. The first one is the masculinity. I think it's the highest in the world. It means, our society is very, masculine. Men don't care family. Men keep working until late night, and they don't care. I know it's very different in Europe. Germany still has a bit high score compared with Latin Europe, like in Italy, France, or Scandinavia. Their score is like this. They always prioritize their family or personal life. But in Japan, everybody sacrifices their family. And the second one is uncertainty avoidance. Our culture is very risk averse, maybe the most in the world. So people don't like new things. People try to keep doing the same things. And long-term orientation. Germany has also a high score. It means people like to keep working with the same partner or supplier as far as it goes well. So they don't want to change. They like long-term relationships. So, and your Japanese competitor is working super hard. So this is the reason why it's very difficult to, replace existing components or any kind of products by yours. So, so it takes time. You have to a lot of, make efforts to get into their business. The reason of this masculine and the culture was made by this samurai culture. I believe many of you guys have heard harakiri. So luckily, it's not available right now, but I think it was abolished just 150 years ago. At the time, if samurai made a mistake, he had to commit suicide. This is a meaning in Japan. We have to be responsible for what we did and what we said. So, so that's why Japanese people are super conservative, and they really want to avoid any kind of mistakes. Okay, I'd like to explain the reality of marketing and sales activities in Japan in this sector, in this session. The first aspect is language. Unfortunately, usually 99% of business Japanese people don't speak English. Some may speak, but they don't feel comfortable to communicate in English, especially engineers. They usually don't speak English. You are very lucky if you encounter such a fluent English-speaking engineer. And please do not, send their emails in English and make phone call in English because people don't understand what you request. And all documents must be written in Japanese. Marketing material, technical documents, and the technical service should be provided in Japanese as well. And the sales process. You can find a typical sales process in an open and flexible country. I don't say where it is, but in open-minded country, you can arrange a fast meeting easily because people are open, flexible, and you will have some Q&A and the negotiation, and it doesn't take a lot of time to reach an agreement with the company in such a country. But the problem is, you have to go forward and backwards after, agreement. Sometimes, they change the scope of work, and sometimes they try to cancel it, even though they have signed on the contract. This is a typical sales process in open and flexible country. But in Japan, it's really energy consuming to arrange a fast meeting because people are shy and they don't like a new supplier. We have to pass a gatekeeper junior level and to a manager to reach a right person. And then they will ask you hundreds of questions. Of course, we give them an offer. Let's have a meeting. You can ask any kind of questions to our clients directly, but they usually try to get all the answers to the question they have before the initial meeting. Many of them usually say, we need to get an approval from our bosses for arranging an initial meeting. Of course, I usually say, this is no obligation. You can immediately meet our client and have an open discussion, but it's unlikely to happen in Japan. So it's really energy consuming to reach that position. And then, they have a lot of internal negotiation for making consensus. And they require a lot of meetings. Many of our clients are requested to come back to Japan again, again, again. And finally, you can get an agreement. But the benefit of working together with Japanese is, everything goes smoothly on implementation. People respect any kind of agreements, contracts, or so they respect promise. Probably, I think it's somewhat similar with German culture. And the communication, the biggest difference with Germany is this. I believe German people like very clear, logical, radical communication, especially in technical matters. But in Japan, it's opposite. This is a framework of business culture. So you guys are here, low context. It means you communicate in a very explicit way. You want to make everything clear. But Japan is opposite. Direct communication way is thought to be very rude in Japan. So, for example, junior level cannot say no to their managers in front of other people. And if we have to say some negative information to others, we like to imply those things. We put some information between the lines. So in Japan, most important messages are hidden in the lines. So you have to analyze what they really want to say. So if you ask a question in a direct way, like, are you interested in our products? All Japanese say yes, but it just means not no. So you have to break down your questions in a small, question Otherwise, they just say, yes, good. So people don't like to give you negative information because you are a foreigner. So people are not good at discussion. They usually just give a presentation to you and ask your products information, but they don't like to have a discussion on the spot. They usually say, let us bring this information to our bosses and we will get an approval from my boss and we'll come back to you. So everything is not decided in the meeting. So it's really frustrating to German or American. And people prefer information in documents because many of Japanese still have difficulties in speaking in English and listening in English. So they usually explain or listen things roughly in the meeting, and they like to confirm details in documents. So speaking blah 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 is very harmful to Japanese people, and it's another trouble. People usually put a lot of sugar coating on their words, especially to foreigners. My colleague Satoshi experienced a funny thing. Do you want to explain, Satoshi, by yourself?
Oh, so you mean
yeah, your experience with your American manager.
Yeah, when I was working for the manufacturing company of US, from the US, I was selling automotive components to Japanese customer. Then that product had a quality issue. So the customer strongly claimed me. Then, so I thought it was a huge problem. So I asked the American manager to come to Japan, then apologize to Japanese customer. So then he came to Japan. Then we visited the customer. Then I expected that the customer will strongly claim to this American manager. But instead, the Japanese customer say, hey, welcome to Japan. So how was your trip? So do you enjoy Japanese food? Then the meeting finished. So the Japanese customer didn't claim strongly. So the American manager told me, hey, the customer is not claiming, so why did you ask me to fly over to Japan? But the following day, I visited the Japanese customer again. Then he strongly claimed me, hey, so are you taking care of these quality issues? So it was so tough thing. That means the Japanese customer generally do not tell honestly to the overseas people, foreign people, because he all the way coming to Japan, so Japanese customer cannot strongly claim. So that's what happened to me.
Yeah, it caused by their hospitality. They don't want to make foreigners disappointed when they come to Japan. At the same time, most Japanese like to avoid a conflict, especially in English. So that's why they don't tell you anything honestly. It's a problem.
That's correct.
Thank you, Satoshi.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So another information is about customer relationship. I believe partnership between the manufacturer and the supplier is equal in Europe, but in Japan, large manufacturer controls supply chains. So it's really hierarchical. Big manufacturer like Toyota behaves like king, and they expect suppliers to serve like subordinate or sometimes slave, as Satoshi experienced. And for example, if it's Toyota and it's Honda, actually, tier one supplier to Honda can't have a direct business with Toyota. There's no return contract, but culturally, it's not allowed. Nowadays, Toyota, Honda, or automotive companies announce they are trying to, destroy these carrots, but this culture still exists. So please do not expect equal partners with your customer. Always, buyer is stronger than seller. This is a Japanese culture. There's a proverb: a customer is God. So You should not dare to your gut. And also personal relationship is very important to be successful in Japan, but it's somewhat different from other Asian countries. In some cases, personal relationship means bribery or corruption in some countries, but in Japan, it's different. In Japan, you have to show your strong loyalty and commitment to your customer, especially in the case of technical trouble. You have to make your customers feeling safe. If something wrong happens on their sides, you are expected to do anything. I mean, anything. So actually, my colleague Satoshi experienced, he had to check all the inventory, maybe 1,000 of inventories within a few days, right?
Yeah, for the 3 days, from the morning until late in the evening, I checked thousands of the products. It was very tough experience for me.
So our customer is always arrogant here. Come here right now, check all the inventory. Otherwise, you should not come back to your home. So it's very different. I think it's a human rights issue in Europe, but it's natural in Japan. And also, you are requested to visit their factories very often. Nowadays, under COVID-19, I don't think so, but nobody knows how it will change or won't change. So this relationship matter is also tricky for European. And another problem is definition of quality control. Most of Japanese are perfectionists, and most of them prefer micromanagement because they don't want to commit the suicide hierarchy. Of course, it's mentally, we still have a strong fear of failure in any cases. So this is a good reason. This is a specification given from a European company to a Chinese factory in the case of outsourcing of production of these products. And this is a specification from a Japanese company. Obviously, both products are almost the same, but the way of making specification in Japan is, quite in detail. And the problem is, German engineers don't like this, right? But if you, reject this type of specification, you have no chance to be successful in Japan. And also, Japanese engineers ask hundreds of questions, sometimes irrational questions. But you should not ignore those questions. You have to be very polite and you have to try to answer to any kind of questions. And if your products have some defects, they request you to submit a lot of corrective action report. And usually they ask why 5 times. For example, if you say this defect was made by our staff at this process of production, they will ask why this human error happened. And then they ask why. So it's really annoying you. But you have to, meet their requirements to be successful in Japan. Okay, now I'd like to explain some market entry options to Japan. First of all, as I explained, Japan is not growing in terms of economy here. The market is really mature and almost fixed by strong domestic and international players. So I can say you can find oligopoly in any kind of industries. And Germany is somewhat similar. Also very difficult to enter for foreign companies, right? But in growing market, there are many business opportunities because distributors are always trying to find new products to meet the growing demand. That's why it's easy to find good distributors in growing market. Actually, it happened in Japan in 1970s and 80s. So many American and European companies entered Japan when I was young, like a child. But now, the growth hit the ceiling, and in some industries, as I said, in department store or furniture, fashion, most of the distributors are doing the opposite things. They are trying to reduce the cost by cutting the number of suppliers and inventory. So in that situation, most of the distributors respond to you on a negative way. Oh, sorry, new product. We are reducing the number of suppliers. It's excessive. So this is a typical response from Japanese distributors. So it's not easy to find a good distributor in Japan. In addition, in some industries, there's no good distributors selling your products on behalf of you. This is a typical case in automotive and construction machinery industries. Actually, this is the case of American engine filter. Actually, they had a meeting with some distributors and end users, but nothing happens. So the company expects some distributors they met will promote their products to end users. But the reality of structure of supply chain in this industry is like this. Distributors' main function is just-in-time delivery. And they usually don't do any sales activities on behalf of a supplier because they are purchasing hundreds or thousands of products from many suppliers and they deliver to end users. So in this case, there's no difference for this distributor between selling your company's products or other company's products because price would be almost same and the profit would be almost same. So it doesn't make any difference for this distributor. Either will be fine for this guy. So in this case, you have to do sales directly to end user to give a presentation of your technology and have a technical discussion with the engineers. And then if you reach an agreement with this end user A, this guy will place an order to this distributor and you will have a chance to deliver to your products to this distributor. But you cannot have a direct communication with your end user from Germany. You have to have your own sales in Japan. Due to the cultural reason, my colleague Satoshi explained, you have to your own salesperson working in Japan on the ground. So this is the only way to be successful in Japan for a supplier in automotive and construction machinery. So in some sectors, just finding a distributor wouldn't be a solution. So you have to ask a local expert like us, what kind of options are available in a particular industry. So I know just finding a distributor is an ideal way because it's low risk. The ideal situation is you just make an agreement with a local distributor and your products are sold semi-automatically. You do nothing, but this guy works hard. Automatically, your products are sold. But it's unlikely to happen in Japan. Or it happened in the last century when our economy was growing. But nowadays, probably some of you guys have a local distributor in Japan, but you are frustrated with their performance. But it's inevitable because, this option is a very low risk, but the control is also low. So you cannot control your local distributor because they work for their own interests. You cannot control. So if you really want to control your business in Japan, you have to take this way or other ways. You have to take some risks. Otherwise, you cannot control your growth in Japan. We usually recommend some option here, like business development on outsourcing. Most of our clients prefer this way. They hire a sales and marketing company like us, which work on behalf of our clients. But It's a really efficient way, ideal way, but in many cases, sooner or later, your sales hit the ceiling. I'd like to explain some advantages and disadvantages of just selling through a local distributor in Japan. Though there are benefits, you can easily get first market experience. As I mentioned, low risk, low investment, and hopefully you can take advantage of their existing customer base. But there are many disadvantages. Japanese distributors usually don't disclose important information. You can't get customer relationship. Some of our clients said they didn't have any experience to visit the Japanese customers. When they come to Japan, they just have a meeting with their distributor, that's it. Or they just bring our client to some very good, nice customer. But it's like a ceremony, ritual. Our clients didn't get any real information from that kind of meetings. And also they cannot get information, and there's no perfect distributor. Their market coverage is always limited. Some distributors focus on a particular industry or a particular company group. You cannot expect one distributor to cover all the markets. And as I mentioned, it's difficult to control your sales activities in Japan and also end user pricing. And at the beginning, of course, the service level should be low, and it's not effective for selling to Japanese customers located outside Japan because it's not their business. Your local distributor is interested in selling only in Japan, so you have to have other options to capture sales to Japanese customers located outside Japan. And the worst point is you never know what's going on if your business doesn't grow in Japan. So I don't say in all industries or in any cases, but you will experience this situation with high probability when you do sales only through a local distributor. So I'd like to give you some case studies how our clients have become successful in this very tricky market. Before explaining case, I'd like to give you some information about the market research. Actually, we don't recommend market research, especially to industrial goods suppliers. It's like scratching the surface of the market. As I explained, the culture is really conservative, and it's very difficult to reach a key engineer in your target organization, especially in a big organization. Functionality is broken down into hundreds of small business units, and it's very difficult to identify a key person in a particular field, like sensor for safety driving or something. We have to spend a lot of time to reach that kind of specific person, and people usually reject interview offer because they are shy and really conservative, and again, people don't speak honestly to a stranger, and usual researchers and consultants don't have deep technical knowledge, and they cannot get into deep in an interview. And if your product should be customized on your customer's specification, this type of work should be done in an interactive way, because it's very difficult to judge your marketability just giving product information to your customer and get their feedback. So you have to have a technical discussion with your engineer in order to judge if your products really have opportunities in Japan. So our recommendation is here, test marketing on outsourcing base. It means you outsource marketing and sales activities to a marketing firm like us, and we do sales activities and get information from your potential customers, and we plan strategy together with our clients. So I think this is the best way. Actually, most of our clients finally have chosen this way. I strongly recommend this approach. And this is the case one, German components supplier for plant equipment. This is what we did. We did marketing and sales activities on behalf of this client, and we sent our staff to their production site for product training, and we translated all the marketing material, and we conducted research to identify potential customers and try to establish contact with the key person and had a technical discussion with them. And the challenges, voltage standard in Japan is different from Europe or any other Asian countries. And our client found they need to spend a 1 million investment to adapt to the Japanese standard. In addition, the strongest competitor has advantage in both quality and price. So it's not promising at all, right? But our staff and my colleague Satoshi visited many potential customers and found the strategic target market segmentation. So the strategy is, this is our German clients, and this is Japan customers. The target segmentation is the customer who purchase their components, then finally export their final products to overseas. In this case, Japanese voltage standard doesn't matter, right? And this company has a strong maintenance network in some areas, like in Middle East or Southeast Asia. So this company can maintenance their final products. So finally, they have increased sales revenue from Japan, and now they sent an expert who speaks Japanese fluently from South Korea. I believe he doesn't have a working visa because it takes just 2 hours from South Korea to Japan. And he's based in Japan mainly, but he often comes and goes. And at the same time, the company has started searching M&A opportunities. And my company also supported this activity. So there are such ways. They started their sales development on outsourcing basis here. Of course, it requires some costs, a monthly cost like several thousand euros, but they had very high control because we report everything, marketing information, meeting minutes, all our activities on the monthly report or quarterly reports. And finally, we found a strategic segment, and then they made a decision to hire a Japanese-speaking guy in South Korea and terminated the contract with us. And at the same time, they started searching M&A opportunities. We helped this activity as well. So at the same time, they developed their distributors, and that Korean guy is controlling this distributor as well. So I think this is a very smart way. They enter with our support and found a distributor and found a strategic segment and started the next step, which is M&A. And another case is German components for industrial electronics companies. What we did is the same with the case one. And the challenges for this case are they have a wide range of products and wide range of applications and industries. So their local distributor had no idea where they have to concentrate on. Actually, we found this local distributor and made the agreement with them. And we visited many customers together with these distributors. And finally, we found a target segmentation like products B to industry 2 like this. And our client and the distributor made an agreement, like let's focus on this sector. And finally, they increased sales revenue from Japanese companies. And then they had a chance to deliver to a Japanese customer in China, because our decision-making guide over purchasing this product is same in both Japan and China. And I think it's a really successful case. And finally, this company established a strong relationship with their local distributor, meaning owner family bought a small share of this German company. So it's a sort of a financial relationship. Now their business in Japan keeps growing steadily. So I believe it will keep growing after COVID-19. So their way is they outsource their sales and marketing to our firm on outsourcing basis. And first we found a distributor, and we supported the technical support, and we sometimes accompany our distributor to meetings with end users. And finally, our client graduated from our service. We keep working from this company for 8 years, I think. And finally, sort of collaboration, the distributor bought some small share of our clients. So this is another successful case. So this is the end of my presentation. So I don't recommend you spend your time and money for research and consulting, but we like to recommend test marketing and strategy planning at the same time, because market research can't, disclose all the marketing information, especially in the industrial market. It requires a lot of technical discussion to find an opportunity. So after the marketing activities on outsourcing basis, we will find a way to the next step, which are FDI or M&A joint venture, like that. So our recommendation is business development on outsourcing basis, but at the same time, we can help you on any kinds of stages of your market entry into Japan. Thank you. I hope you get some new insights from my presentation.
Thank you both, Yasushi and Satoshi, for the very, very informative and interesting presentation. We got very good feedback over the Q&A space here. And so we have one more question which was not been answered yet from Mr. Hurstman. He actually asked, is there any benefit from having a representative office in Japan?
Yeah. Maybe shall I answer to this?
Yeah.
Is there any benefit from having a representative office in Japan? And if you use only a Japanese partner or distributor, as Yasushi mentioned, in many cases, they will not proactively promote your products, or sometimes they do not disclose the end customers or market information. But if you have a representative office or a local office, the person there can directly visit end customer, then collect market information. So I think it totally makes sense to have a representative office. But one thing to note is that in Japan, representative office can do only marketing and market researches, and it cannot do sales activities. So only branch office, registered branch office or registered subsidiary can do sales activities by visiting potential customer. But another one exception is that if the representative office is an outsourced representative office, that means outsourcing to third company like us, then it can do sales activities. Then we can share the end customer's information or market information. So the answer is that as long as it is a outsourced representative office or registered branch office or registered subsidiary company, it totally makes sense to have an option to do the business in Japan.
Okay, thank you, Satoshi. Since we don't have much time left, actually, we are overdue already. I will ask 2 more questions, which I got via email. Yasushi, Satoshi, one of you, hiring a German who speaks Japanese, would that work for business development in Japan?
I don't recommend that approach. As Satoshi explained, Japanese people are not open to a foreigner. If you ask the same question to a hacker, they will say, yes, you can hire a German guy because that is their job, but I don't think so.
Okay, so one more last question. How much does setting up a corporation in Japan require per year, approximately?
It's not cheap. At least you have to spend $250,000 to $500,000 in the first year without any sales. I think it's not a good idea for SMEs. That's why they usually choose outsourcing base, because the cost will be less than half, or sometimes less than 1/3, 1/4. And at the same time, if you need to operate your Japan subsidiary, you have to spend your management resource, because you have to understand accounting standard of Japan or labor law in Japan. So I know it's not interesting at all. So.
Okay, so I think, we have a few more questions here, but maybe we will answer them via email or later on after this session. I'd like to thank you again, both of you, and I switch back to German now to say goodbye. So bleibt mir noch zu sagen an das Publikum, ganz herzlichen Dank für die Teilnahme und Ihr Interesse. Sollte es noch offene Fragen geben, wie ich gerade gesagt habe, kriegen Sie sicherlich von meinen Kollegen bald eine Antwort. Ich wünsche Ihnen alles Gute und in diesen Zeiten bleiben Sie natürlich gesund. Alles Gute und bis bald. Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.